Hi, I'm Beth the Builder, and today's honest guide to home repair is how I remodeled my porch for under $15. But before we begin, subscribe below for more helpful do-it-yourself home repair videos every Friday. And if you're a super generous person, I have a link in the description with my PayPal, along with all the links from my Instagram, Pinterest, and Twitter, so you can follow me all the places. Alright, we're going to talk about the 4 things that I did to finish my porch floor. Number 1. Sanding. I did sand my whole porch floor by hand. And yeah, I totally could have rented a big old floor sander, but I don't have $100 to drop on that right now. So I had some decent sanders and I had some help, and we blew through the majority of the floor in an afternoon. And then came the really tricky part, that I did everything else by myself, which, yes, was time consuming, but it cost me $4 to do it this way. Obviously, if I was gonna do a much bigger room, or if, you were more concerned about like the time factor, you would want to rent a big sander and do it that way. But if you are rich in time and low on money, you can do it this way for sure. So I got the coarsest sandpaper I could find and just went to town. And honestly, it wasn't that big of a deal. It really didn't bother me to have to hand sand it all that much. Yeah, it's tiresome and hot, and it takes a lot of energy, but it's not like it's a hard skill or something. So that was step 1. Step number 2, paint stripper. So I got to the edges of my floor, and the layers of paint specifically were very, very thick and very hard to sand. So I ended up finding a gallon of paint stripper in my basement, and it was called Safest Stripper. And it was a low odor, semi-paste paint and varnish remover. I slapped it on with an old paintbrush, and then the paint stripper, after I'd let it sit for like 5 or 6 hours, just scraped up with a putty knife, and I wiped it on some newspaper and I threw it away. And then I let that dry, and then I sanded it all down again, and I'm so glad I found it and used that. It was so useful. Alright, number 3, stain remover. So, there was a lot of imperfections in the wood after I'd sanded it down, and it was mostly like stains that had been set into the wood from whatever the fuck. So, I did some searching, and I tried some unvetted internet methods of removing stain from wood. So whether it's black, dark stains, or rust, or watermarks, or whatever. So the first thing I tried was a baking soda and vinegar combo. And in my head, that was like, hey, that makes sense because those things are great for cleaning things. Wrong. As you can see here, it was such a mess. I was so disappointed because I spent so long getting it to the state that it was in after sanding it for so many days and going through so much work just to kind of like it up right at the end. So I let it dry, I scrubbed it off with some water and some cleaner. That didn't work, that didn't help. It had like just discolored the wood and made it look even worse, like made the stains darker, and then also the areas that were a little bit lighter with vinegar made those areas lighter. So it was just a big hot mess. So the thing that saved my ass was hydrogen peroxide. And this was also listed on some site that I read about essentially bleaching wood. And obviously, I mean, everyone has hydrogen peroxide and it's like $3 a bottle, but I had 3 bottles for some reason. And I coated my whole floor with that. Something I ran into when I was searching for things that remove stains from wood was oxalic acid. Oxalic acid? I don't know. It's a powder that it's usually labeled wood bleach or just oxalic acid, and it's not terribly expensive, and it bleaches wood. So I did consider that as an option if all the other things that I'd done did not work. My only hang up on it was that it's a powder, and people were warning users that if the powder gets in the air and you inhale it, that's like a whole slew of issues with like your lungs bleeding and shit. So that made me a little nervous, and luckily I found something that did end up working. Alright, number 4, stain. I tested my lightest stain on my wood, and I didn't really like it. I think it showed too many of the imperfections of wood that are just going to be there in old wood. And so I had a little bit of dark walnut stain, and I tried that, and that's what we went with. So I had to go get another quart, and I ended up using a stain and finish, which has a clear finish in with the stain, so it kind of cuts down the process from 2 steps to 1 step. I'm not really sure how it's going to hold up durability wise. I kind of still plan on putting a coat of polyurethane on the whole porch because I think that's just going to hold up better, and it's probably going to make it look a little bit more even overall. But since I did that, like, we've been using it, you know, dragging chairs across it and stuff, and it's holding up pretty well. So I'm pretty impressed. It went on really, really smooth. I love staining things. It is the most satisfying thing in the world. It's so easy. Check out my stain and sealant video that I made for more tips and tricks about staining. The one big thing that I learned in this process is staining a large area of wood floor. I started to go down across the wood grain. So instead of going with the wood grain, I was going down the boards because I was doing it in sections, and I just didn't even think about it, even though if I thought about it, yeah, for sure, it makes more sense to do it with the wood grain. So I realized there was a slight color discrepancy when I started to move over to do another section. So I quick changed tactics, and I started just going back and forth from left to right to left with the boards, and that totally cleared up my problem. I went back over the little areas and just put another coat of stain across it, and it blended in fine. So maybe it wouldn't have been a big deal with a second coat, but I wasn't sure, so I just changed tactics midway, and I think it worked out really well in the end. So that's my biggest tip for a large area of stain. I'll definitely be checking in with you guys about whether or not the stain and finish combo actually ends up holding up, as well as doing those steps separately. I'll let you know. I really want to encourage people that even if you're starting a project and you don't have all the fanciest tools, it's okay to improvise and to make do with what you have, because if you have a little bit of ingenuity and a little bit of courage to just try it, you're gonna get pretty far. For sure, like a big old sander would have really helped me. But if you don't have the resources and the money to drop on a project, you have to do what you gotta do to make it work for you. That rhymes. I like that. But yeah, I mean, like, I hope that's helpful, and I hope that's encouraging for people who want to jump in and do house projects and repair things, but they're like, well, I don't have, 100 different big old fancy tools in my basement. That's okay, me neither. I mean, I have a decent amount of tools, but I also have a lot of books, and I also know that, like, it's not all about money. All right, and that is how I remodeled my porch for less than $15. It was a lot of work, but well worth it. I love it. So are my plans. So, like, comment, share this with somebody, subscribe. I have new videos every Friday, and thanks for watching.